They thought I was weak because I always gave in. They were wrong. I wasn't weak. I was just waiting for the right moment to show them what real strength looked like. My name is Madison Chin, and this is the story of how my family's greed finally met my limits. Growing up, I learned early that love in our house came with conditions. When I was 16 and my parents divorced in the messiest way possible, somehow the responsibility of keeping our family together fell on my shoulders. Not my sister Sophia's. She was only 10 and too young to understand. Not my parents. They were too busy destroying each other in court. Mine. "Madison, you're the responsible one," Mom would say, dumping grocery lists and bills on my desk while I tried to do homework. "Sophia needs stability right now." What I needed apparently didn't matter. What I wanted definitely didn't count. So I gave up my after-school job to pick Sophia up from elementary school. I gave up hanging out with friends to help her with homework while Mom worked late shifts at the diner. When I got offered a full scholarship to Northwestern University, my dream school, I turned it down because Sophia was crying every night, begging me not to leave her. "Please don't go, Madison," she sobbed into my shoulder. "You're the only one who takes care of me." Mom stood in the doorway, arms crossed, nodding like I was finally learning what family meant. Instead of Northwestern, I went to community college part-time and worked full-time at an electronics store. Every paycheck went toward keeping our lights on and putting food on the table. When Sophia wanted to go to Westfield Academy, the private school where all the important kids went, guess who worked double shifts for 2 years to pay the tuition? I slept in the converted attic while Sophia got the bigger bedroom. I drove a 15-year-old Honda while Sophia got driving lessons in a leased BMW. I wore thrift store clothes while Sophia's closet looked like a Nordstrom explosion. Everyone told me I was such a good sister, so mature, so selfless. What they really meant was so useful. But here's what nobody expected. I was paying attention. While I was working retail, I was learning about technology, about business, about what people actually wanted. When smartphones started getting popular, I convinced my manager to let me set up a repair service. When that took off, I started doing it freelance. When that exploded, I quit and started my own company. Chen Tech Solutions went from a one-woman operation in my attic to a 15-employee firm specializing in small business technology integration. By the time I was 28, we were handling accounts for half the restaurants and boutiques in the city. By 30, I had enough to put a down payment on a penthouse in the downtown district. The penthouse wasn't just an apartment, it was proof. Proof that the girl who slept in the attic and wore hand-me-downs could build something beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, a kitchen that could have been an architectural digest, and most importantly, space that was entirely mine. I thought my family would be proud. I thought finally having something to show for all those years of sacrifice would earn me some respect. I was wrong. Sophia, meanwhile, had turned her pretty face and private school connections into a social media following. 200,000 Instagram followers hung on her every perfectly filtered selfie. She called herself a lifestyle influencer, which as far as I could tell, meant getting free stuff in exchange for posting pictures of herself using it. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Long black hair that always fell perfectly, a smile that could melt hearts, and the kind of effortless grace that came from never having to worry about anything real. While I was building a business, she was building a brand. While I was learning to manage employees and cash flow, she was learning to manage lighting and camera angles. And somehow, her way of life was considered more valuable than mine. "Madison works so hard," she'd tell her followers, posting pictures of the designer bag I'd bought her for her birthday. "I'm so lucky to have such a generous sister." The comments would flood in about how sweet our family was, how blessed she was. What they didn't see was me working until midnight to afford that bag, or skipping meals to make sure she could go to those influencer events. Everything changed when she met Dylan Hartwell at some charity gala she'd been invited to by a sponsor. The Hartwells were old Boston money, the kind of family that had been wealthy for so many generations they'd forgotten what it was like to think about money at all. Dylan's great-grandfather had started a shipping company that was now a logistics empire. They owned property in 3 states, had a box at the symphony, and apparently judged people by their pedigree. Sophia came home from that first date glowing like she'd found the Holy Grail. "He's perfect, Madison," she gushed, showing me pictures on her phone. "His family has this amazing house in Martha's Vineyard, and his mom went to Vassar, and they winter in Switzerland." She said winter like it was a verb, which should have been my first warning sign. Dylan was handsome in that generic rich boy way. Blonde hair, strong jaw, the kind of smile that suggested he'd never been told no about anything important. In the photos Sophia showed me, he looked like he'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren catalog. What bothered me wasn't Dylan himself. He seemed nice enough the few times I met him. What bothered me was how Sophia started changing around him. Suddenly, our family wasn't good enough. Our middle-class background became an embarrassment. Most importantly, my success became something to be ashamed of. "You don't understand, Madison," she said when I questioned why she was suddenly uncomfortable bringing Dylan around. "His family is different. They're refined. They care about tradition and class and, well, breeding. Breeding. Like we were livestock. I built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing," I reminded her. "That used to be called the American Dream." She wrinkled her nose like I'd said something vulgar. "That's new money, Madison. It's not the same thing. They can tell the difference." Apparently, the Hartwells could smell my ambition from across the room, and it reeked of desperation to them. Never mind that their ancestors had probably clawed their way to wealth just as ruthlessly. Time had given their money a respectable patina that mine would never have. The engagement happened fast. 6 months of dating, and suddenly Sophia was sporting a diamond the size of a small planet and planning a wedding that cost more than most people's houses. The Hartwells were paying, of course, which meant everything had to be perfect, elegant, and most importantly, representative of both families. That's when the trouble started. "Madison, we need to talk about the wedding," Mom said during one of our monthly dinners. These had become increasingly tense affairs where Sophia would complain about wedding planning stress while I nodded supportively and picked up the check. "What about it?" I asked, cutting into my salmon. Sophia and Mom exchanged a look, one of those loaded glances that immediately put me on alert. "Well, Dylan's family is very traditional," Sophia began. "They care a lot about family presentation and social standing." "Okay." I waited for the actual point. "They've been asking about our family assets," Mom continued. You know, property, investments, that kind of thing." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "Assets? They want to make sure Sophia is coming from a family of substance," Sophia said, not quite meeting my eyes. "It's important for their social circle." I set down my fork. "Sophia, you're marrying Dylan, not his entire social circle." "You don't understand how their world works," she snapped. "Everything matters. Where you live, what you drive, what your family looks like on paper. It all reflects on Dylan." "So what exactly are you asking me?" Another look between them. "Well," Mom said carefully, "your penthouse would really help with the family image." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire I couldn't yet see. "Help how?" Sophia leaned forward, her eyes bright with what she probably thought was a brilliant idea. "What if you gave it to me and Dylan as a wedding present? Just think how impressed his family would be. A penthouse in the financial district. It's exactly the kind of thing that would show we're a family of substance." I stared at her. "You want me to give you my home?" "Not give," Mom said quickly. "More like transfer. For the family. You could buy something else." "Something else?" I repeated. "You're so good with money, Madison," Sophia said. "You could build up to another penthouse in a few years, but right now I need this. My future depends on it." The audacity of it took my breath away. My penthouse, the thing I'd worked 80-hour weeks for, the symbol of everything I'd built, should just be handed over because Sophia needed to impress some old money snobs? "No," I said. "Madison," Mom started. "No," I repeated louder. "Absolutely not." Sophia's face crumpled like I'd slapped her. "But Madison, I need this. Dylan's family expects—" "I don't care what Dylan's family expects," I cut her off. "It's my home. I earned it." "Don't be selfish," Mom said sharply. "Family comes first." "Selfish." That word would haunt me for the next 2 weeks. What followed was a campaign of emotional warfare that would have impressed military strategists. Suddenly, every family member had an opinion about my selfishness. Aunt Linda called to tell me how disappointed she was in my attitude. Cousin Mike posted passive-aggressive things on Facebook about family loyalty. Grandma Rose, who was 93 and barely remembered my name, somehow had very strong feelings about my unwillingness to help poor Sophia. The guilt trip was orchestrated with military precision. Every conversation became about my selfishness, my lack of family values, my inability to see beyond my own needs. They painted me as the villain in Sophia's love story, the jealous sister who couldn't bear to see her sibling happy. "All we're asking is for you to share," Mom said during one particularly brutal phone call. "After everything this family has done for you." Everything the family has done for me? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I've been supporting this family since I was 16 years old. We raised you, Madison. We fed you and clothed you and gave you a home. Now it's time to give back." Give back. As if the last 14 years of my life hadn't been one long exercise in giving back. Sophia took a different approach. She'd show up at my office with tears in her eyes, talking about how Dylan's mother was starting to ask questions about our family's financial stability. She'd send me screenshots of text conversations with Dylan where he seemed confused about why his fiancé's family couldn't provide the kind of wedding gift his family expected. "She's going to call off the engagement," Sophia sobbed during one of these visits. "Dylan's mom thinks our family is lower class. She's been making comments about how maybe Dylan should find someone more suitable. If Dylan's family is that judgmental, maybe you shouldn't marry into it," I suggested. The look she gave me could have frozen hell. "Easy for you to say. You had your chance at love and blew it. Some of us actually want to get married." That stung more than I wanted to admit. She was referring to Marcus, my ex-fiancé who'd left 2 years earlier because he said I was married to my work. It had been a low blow then, and it was a low blow now. But I held firm. The penthouse was mine. I'd earned it, paid for it, and built it into a home. I wasn't going to hand it over just so Sophia could impress some snobs who would probably never respect our family anyway. The wedding day arrived like an execution date. The ceremony was at St. Matthew's Cathedral, followed by a reception at the St. Regis Hotel, the kind of venue that required connections just to book. Everything was perfect, from the white orchid centerpieces to the string quartet playing during cocktail hour. I wore a navy blue dress that cost more than my first car and smiled through the ceremony like nothing was wrong. Sophia looked beautiful in her custom Vera Wang gown, and Dylan looked suitably handsome in his tailored tuxedo. When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Except mine. I was too busy preparing for what I knew was coming. The reception was a masterclass in old-money elegance. The ballroom was decorated in white and gold, with crystal chandeliers casting warm light over round tables set with fine china and fresh flowers. The guest list read like a who's who of Boston society. Judges, senators, CEOs, and philanthropists who treated charity galas like sporting events. I was seated at table 12, which might as well have been Siberia. Not with the family, not with the wedding party, but with distant cousins and plus ones nobody quite knew what to do with. Dylan's family occupied the prime real estate near the head table, a collection of perfectly groomed people who looked like they'd stepped out of a country club catalog. Dinner was salmon with some kind of French sauce I couldn't pronounce, paired with wines that probably cost more per bottle than most people spent on groceries in a month. The conversation at my table was stilted and polite, people asking what I did for work and then looking puzzled when I explained technology consulting, like I'd told them I wrestled alligators for a living. The real show started after the main course. Dad, who'd been conspicuously friendly all evening despite our recent tension, stood up and tapped his champagne glass with a fork. The room quieted, expecting the traditional father of the bride speech. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "thank you all for being here to celebrate Sophia and Dylan's special day. Standard opening. Nothing suspicious yet. As Sophia's father, I couldn't be prouder of the woman she's become, or happier about her choice in Dylan. The Hartwell family has welcomed our daughter with open arms, and we're honored to be joining such a distinguished family. He was laying it on thick, even for a wedding speech. I saw some of Dylan's relatives exchanging glances, the kind of subtle communication that passes between people who've known each other for decades. In fact, Dad continued, we're so excited about this union that we wanted to give the happy couple something truly special, something that represents our family's commitment to their future together. My stomach dropped. No, they wouldn't. My eldest daughter, Madison, has built a wonderful life for herself. She's a successful businesswoman who owns a beautiful penthouse in the financial district. And today, as her wedding gift to Sophia and Dylan, she's generously decided to— No, I said, standing up so fast my chair fell backward. The word cut through the ballroom like a gunshot. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. 200 of Boston's social elite suddenly found themselves witnessing what was clearly about to become a very public family meltdown. Dad's face went red. Madison, sit down. No, I repeated, louder this time. I'm not giving them my penthouse. The silence was deafening. I could hear the clink of ice in someone's water glass 3 tables away. Sophia stood up, her face a mask of humiliation and rage. Madison, please, don't do this here. Don't do what? Tell the truth? You want me to just smile and nod while you give away my home without asking me? It's for family, Mom hissed, rising from her seat at the head table. Don't be selfish. There was that word again. Selfish. Mrs. Hartwell, Dylan's mother, was watching this unfold with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for car accidents. Her husband looked like he was calculating the social cost of being associated with this level of dysfunction. I worked for that penthouse, I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. I worked 80-hour weeks for years to afford it. I sacrificed everything to build the life I have, and I'm not giving it away just so you can impress people who will never respect us anyway. That's when Mom snapped. She walked across the ballroom floor like she was crossing a battlefield, her heels clicking against the marble with military precision. I saw her coming but somehow couldn't move, couldn't believe she would actually— The slap echoed through the ballroom like a thunderclap. The force of it knocked me sideways, sending me stumbling into the table behind me. My cheek exploded in pain, the kind of sharp, stunning hurt that comes from being hit by someone wearing rings. I tasted blood where my teeth cut the inside of my mouth. Don't you dare embarrass this family, she snarled, her voice low and vicious. Don't be selfish. This is Sophia's day, and you will not ruin it with your greed. The ballroom was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. 200 people held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Cell phones appeared because even Boston society couldn't resist recording a spectacular meltdown when it happened right in front of them. I touched my cheek, feeling the heat radiating from where her hand had connected. When I pulled my fingers away, there was a small smear of blood from where her wedding ring had caught the skin. For a moment, I just stood there, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. Sophia's friends were recording. Dylan's family looked mortified. The wait staff had frozen mid-service, unsure whether to intervene or pretend they hadn't seen anything. I looked at Mom, standing there with her chest heaving and her eyes wild with anger. I looked at Sophia, who wasn't trying to stop this, wasn't defending me, was just standing there nodding like Mom had done exactly what needed to be done. I looked at Dad, who was staring at his shoes like he could disappear into them. And finally, I looked at Dylan's family. These people who were supposed to be so impressed by our family's substance. Mrs. Hartwell's mouth was hanging open. Mr. Hartwell was already reaching for his phone, probably to call his lawyer about damage control. That's when I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I wasn't family to these people. I was a resource, a bank account with legs, a solution to their problems and a safety net for their mistakes. When I spoke, my voice was calm and clear and carried to every corner of that ballroom. I see who you really are now. I picked up my purse, straightened my dress, and walked toward the exit. My heels clicked against the marble floor like a countdown timer. No one tried to stop me. No one called my name. As I reached the ballroom doors, I heard the first whisper start behind me, then another. By the time I made it to the lobby, the room was buzzing with shocked conversation. I drove home through the city streets with my cheek throbbing and my mind crystal clear for the first time in years. They wanted to see selfish? They thought I was greedy for keeping what I'd earned? Fine. Let me show them what selfish really looked like. Because they had forgotten something important in their rush to judge me. I wasn't just the family's victim anymore. I was the family's banker, their safety net, their financial foundation. And foundations, when removed properly, can bring down entire buildings. I didn't cry during that drive home. I didn't feel sorry for myself or wonder if I'd made the right choice. Instead, I planned. The first thing I did when I got home was pour myself a glass of wine and sit in my living room, looking out at the city lights through those floor-to-ceiling windows. My cheeks still throbbed, but the pain was oddly clarifying. It stripped away years of guilt and obligation, leaving behind something harder and more focused. They thought they knew me, the quiet, responsible sister who always gave in, always sacrificed, always put family first. They'd built their entire strategy around that assumption. What they didn't realize was that the same skills that had built my business, patience, observation, strategic thinking, had been quietly cataloging every vulnerability in their perfect little world. I opened my laptop and started making lists. First, the financial connections. Mom and Dad's house, the one Sophia had grown up in, the one they'd leveraged twice to pay for her private school and lifestyle, had my name on the mortgage. 5 years ago, when Dad's construction business hit a rough patch, I'd co-signed to prevent foreclosure. The monthly payments came automatically from my business account, a fact they'd conveniently forgotten. Sophia's credit cards, 3 of them, were under my accounts as authorized users. I'd added her when she turned 18 to help her build credit history. She'd been using them for everything from designer clothes to expensive dinners with Dylan, racking up charges that technically belonged to me. The BMW she drove, leased under my business name for tax purposes. The insurance, the maintenance, even the parking passes for her downtown apartment, all traced back to my accounts. Then there were the business connections they didn't even know about. Dylan's father, Richard Hartwell, ran Hartwell Logistics, a company that had been courting Chentech Solutions for months, wanting to modernize their entire IT infrastructure. It would have been a $2 million contract, the kind of deal that could set my company up for years. I'd been planning to announce the partnership at the wedding as a surprise gift for Dylan and Sophia. Funny how things change. My phone buzzed with text messages throughout the night. Sophia, Mom, even a few cousins trying to smooth things over, telling me I'd misunderstood, that we could work things out if I just calmed down and thought about family. I deleted them all without reading past the first few words. Sunday morning, I called my lawyer, Janet Morrison. She was one of the best family law attorneys in the city, a woman who'd built her reputation on protecting successful people from relatives who thought blood entitled them to other people's money. "Madison," she said when I explained the situation, "I've been wondering when you'd call me about your family. Frankly, I'm surprised it took this long." "You saw this coming?" "Honey, I've seen this pattern 100 times. Successful woman, family that treats her like an ATM. Eventually they push too hard. The only question was what would finally break the camel's back." Janet walked me through my options, and they were more extensive than I'd realized. The assault, because that's what it was, assault, witnessed by 200 people with cell phone footage, gave me grounds for a restraining order. The financial entanglements could be unwound, but it would require strategic timing to minimize the impact on my own credit. "The key," Janet explained, "is documentation. Every transaction, every conversation, every threat. Make sure everything is recorded and dated." That's when I discovered the real scope of my family's financial dependence. It wasn't just the mortgage and credit cards. Dad's business had been struggling for 2 years, staying afloat on loans from me that were never paid back. Sophia's apartment rent came from an automatic transfer I'd set up during her college years and never canceled. Even her health insurance was through my company's group plan. I controlled more of their lives than they realized, and they just publicly humiliated me for having the audacity to want to keep my own home. The irony was delicious. Monday morning, I started making phone calls. Chen Tech Solutions. This is Madison Chen calling for Richard Hartwell. Ms. Chen, I was hoping to hear from you soon. I trust you enjoyed the wedding yesterday? What a lovely celebration. I wondered if he'd seen the footage of his new daughter-in-law's mother slapping her sister in front of half of Boston's elite. Somehow, I doubted anyone had shared that particular highlight with him yet. The wedding was certainly memorable, Mr. Hartwell. I'm calling about our pending contract. Excellent. We're very excited to move forward. The preliminary numbers your team presented were exactly what we're looking for. I appreciate that, but I'm afraid I need to withdraw Chen Tech from consideration. Silence. Then, I'm sorry. Did you say withdraw? Yes. After careful consideration, I don't think our companies are a good cultural fit. I wish you the best in finding another vendor. Ms. Chen, if this is about price, I'm sure we can— It's not about money, Mr. Hartwell. It's about values. Thank you for your time. I hung up before he could respond. Next call. First National Bank, Mortgage Department. This is Madison Chen. I need to discuss removing myself as co-signer from account number. I rattled off my parents' mortgage information. I'll be providing 30 days' notice as required by the original agreement. The customer service representative sounded confused. Ma'am, removing a co-signer requires all parties to agree, and typically the remaining borrowers need to qualify for the loan independently. I understand. Please send the paperwork to begin the process. What I didn't mention was that Mom and Dad's income alone wouldn't qualify them for a mortgage on a garden shed, let alone their 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. Without my co-signature and the automatic payments from my account, they'd have about 60 days before foreclosure proceedings began. Third call. American Express, Visa, and MasterCard. I need to remove an authorized user from my accounts immediately. Each conversation was brief and efficient. Sophia's cards would be deactivated by end of business. Her credit score, built entirely on my financial foundation, would crater overnight. Fourth call, BMW Financial Services. I'd like to terminate the lease on vehicle. I provided Sophia's car information. The leaseholder will need to return the vehicle within 10 days. Fifth call, my insurance company, my accountant, my property manager. Every thread that connected my financial life to my family's got cut, one by one. The beautiful thing about having built everything myself was that I knew exactly where all the connections were. I'd been so careful to protect them, to make sure they never had to worry about money or credit or any of the practical concerns that had dominated my life for years. Now that careful protection became a weapon. My assistant, Jessica, knocked on my office door around noon. Madison, there's a Sophia Chen here to see you. She says she's your sister. Send her in. Sophia walked into my office like she was stepping into a minefield. Her eyes were red from crying, and she'd traded yesterday's wedding elegance for jeans and a sweatshirt, probably the first time in years she'd worn anything that wasn't designer. Madison, we need to talk. Do we? She sat down across from my desk, trying to look composed but failing. About yesterday. Things got heated and maybe Mom overreacted, but— Overreacted? I looked at her incredulously. Sophia, she assaulted me in front of 200 people because I wouldn't give you my home. She was just emotional. It's been stressful, planning this wedding, trying to make sure everything was perfect for Dylan's family. And how did that work out? She flinched. What do you mean? I mean, did Dylan's family seem impressed by our family values? Because from where I was standing, right before I got slapped, they looked pretty horrified by the whole display. Sophia's composure cracked a little. That's actually part of why I'm here. Dylan's parents are asking questions about our family dynamics, about whether this kind of drama is normal for us. And what did you tell them? I told them it was just wedding stress, that you were upset about something unrelated. But Madison— She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Mrs. Hartwell is talking about Dylan taking some time to reconsider the marriage. She thinks our family is unstable. I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it died quickly. Maybe she's right. Madison, please. I know you're angry, but I need your help. If you could just talk to Dylan's parents, explain that what happened was a misunderstanding. What exactly was the misunderstanding, Sophia? That I wouldn't hand over my penthouse to impress your in-laws? Because I'm pretty clear on that part. Her face flushed. It wasn't supposed to be permanent. We could have worked something out, maybe bought it from you later, or with what money? Your influence or income? Dylan's trust fund that his parents control? We would have figured it out. No, you would have expected me to figure it out. Just like I've been figuring everything out for this family since I was 16 years old. She stared at me like I was a stranger. What happened to you? You used to care about family. I used to be useful to this family. There's a difference. That's when her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went white. It's Dylan. I should take it. She answered with forced cheerfulness. Hey, babe, how are you feeling today? But her expression changed as she listened. What do you mean your dad's upset about something? What contract? I watched her face crumble as Dylan explained how his father had just lost a major technology deal because the vendor had suddenly withdrawn. How this was going to cost them millions and delay their modernization project by months. How his parents were starting to wonder if the Chin family was more trouble than they were worth. I don't understand, she said into the phone. What does that have to do with... She looked at me, and I saw the moment she connected the dots. Dylan, can I call you back? She hung up and stared at me. You tanked Dylan's dad's business deal. I declined to do business with someone whose family doesn't respect mine. Madison, that's crazy. You're punishing Dylan's family for what Mom did? I'm exercising my right to choose my clients based on my own criteria, just like Dylan's family is exercising their right to judge our family based on theirs. Her phone buzzed with a text, then another, then a rapid-fire series of notifications that made her face go progressively paler. My credit cards aren't working, she said, staring at her phone, and there's something wrong with my car. The dealership is saying the lease has been terminated? I said mildly. That's unfortunate. Madison, what did you do? I removed you as an authorized user on my accounts and terminated the business leases that were in my name. You're welcome to apply for your own credit cards and car lease. I'm sure your income as an influencer will qualify you for something appropriate. The color drained from her face entirely. You can't do this. I absolutely can. In fact, I already have. But how am I supposed to live within your means? I don't know, Sophia. How do most people manage it? She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You're destroying my life out of spite. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply stopping my financial support of your lifestyle. If that destroys your life, maybe your life was built on pretty shaky foundations. What about Mom and Dad? What about the house? What about it? You know they can't afford the mortgage without your help. Then maybe they should have thought about that before deciding I was too selfish to have a say in my own financial decisions. Sophia stared at me for a long moment, like she was seeing me for the first time. I don't know who you are anymore. I'm the same person I've always been. The difference is that now I'm working for my own benefit instead of everyone else's. She left without another word, her designer heels clicking frantically against the hallway floor as she rushed to the elevators. I turned back to my computer and continued working. I had a business to run, and for the first time in years, I could focus on it without worrying about who needed financial rescue this week. The rest of the week was a masterclass in consequence management. Dad called Tuesday morning, his voice tight with panic. Madison, the bank called about the mortgage. They're saying you want to be removed as cosigner? What's this about? It's about exactly what it sounds like, Dad. But honey, we can't qualify for the mortgage on our own. You know our income isn't... Then maybe you should refinance to something you can afford. Madison, please, don't let your anger at your mother destroy our home. My anger? Dad, she hit me, in public, while demanding that I give away my home. And you stood there and let it happen. Silence. Then, she was upset. It was a stressful day. Being upset doesn't give someone the right to assault their daughter. Assault? Madison, don't be dramatic. It was a slap, not... I hung up. Wednesday, Sophia's followers started noticing changes. Her Instagram stories, usually featuring expensive restaurants and designer shopping trips, suddenly shifted to staying in tonight, and cooking at home. The comments sections filled with questions about whether she was okay if something had happened. She posted a carefully crafted message about taking time to focus on marriage and family values. But anyone who'd been following her for a while could read between the lines. The girl who'd built her brand on aspirational luxury was suddenly posting pictures of grocery store meals and Target accessories. Thursday, I got a call from Mrs. Hartwell herself. "Ms. Chen, this is Patricia Hartwell. I believe we need to discuss the recent developments affecting our families." Her voice had that crisp, finishing school precision that came from generations of breeding and education. Under normal circumstances, it would have intimidated me. Today, it just sounded tired. "Mrs. Hartwell, how can I help you?" "I think you know why I'm calling. The contract termination with my husband's company. The financial difficulties your family seems to be experiencing. Dylan is very concerned about Sophia. And frankly, so are we." "I appreciate your concern." "Ms. Chin, I'll be direct. My family has some concerns about the stability of your family dynamic. The incident at the wedding was disturbing, and now these financial issues suggest a pattern of dysfunction that could affect Dylan's future. I understand your position. I'm hoping we can find a way to resolve this situation that's beneficial for everyone involved. Perhaps if you and your family could work through these issues, find some common ground." She was offering me an out, a chance to restore the status quo, to go back to being the family bank in exchange for social acceptance from the Hartwells, to pretend that getting slapped in public was just a misunderstanding that we could all laugh about later. "Mrs. Hartwell, I appreciate your call, but I'm not interested in resolving anything." "I'm sorry?" "Your family is concerned about dysfunction and instability. You're right to be. My family has spent years treating me like a resource instead of a person, and I've finally decided to stop enabling that behavior. If Dylan wants to marry into that dynamic, that's his choice. But I won't be participating in it anymore." Another silence. Then, "I see, and you don't think this withdrawal might be something you'll regret?" "The only thing I regret is waiting this long to do it." Friday afternoon, the final piece fell into place. Jessica knocked on my door with a visitor I hadn't expected. Dylan himself. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled, the kind of exhaustion that comes from stress and sleepless nights. He sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. "Madison, I need to understand what's happening." "What do you want to know?" "Sophia's falling apart. Her credit is destroyed. She can't afford her apartment. Her car got repossessed yesterday. My parents are talking about postponing the marriage indefinitely because they think your family is unstable. And I keep hearing that you're the one behind all of this." I leaned back in my chair. "What do you think, Dylan?" "I think there's more to this story than anyone's telling me. Sophia says you're angry about some misunderstanding at the wedding. Your parents say you're going through a difficult time and taking it out on the family. But none of that explains why you'd blow up your family's entire financial foundation over a wedding argument." Smart boy. No wonder Sophia had fallen for him. "What did Sophia tell you about the wedding gift situation?" "She said your parents wanted to announce that you were giving us your penthouse and you got upset about it being a surprise." I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Is that what she told you?" His expression shifted. "Isn't that what happened?" "Dylan, your fiancée and her parents spent 2 weeks pressuring me to hand over my home to you as a wedding gift. When I refused, they ambushed me at your reception, trying to force me to agree in front of 200 witnesses. When I said no, your new mother-in-law slapped me hard enough to draw blood and called me selfish for wanting to keep the home I'd worked my entire adult life to afford." He stared at me. That's not what Sophia said." "I'm sure it isn't. She said it was supposed to be a surprise gift, that you were angry about the announcement being made without consulting you first." "Dylan, they wanted me to sign property transfer documents at your wedding reception. After spending 2 weeks telling me I was selfish and ungrateful for refusing to give you my penthouse." I watched his face as the implications sank in. Property transfer documents? Complete ownership transfer. Not a loan, not a temporary arrangement. They wanted me to give you my home permanently, and when I refused, I got publicly assaulted for my selfishness. He was quiet for a long time, processing this information. Sophia told me you were being unreasonable about sharing family assets. Sharing family assets. I repeated the phrase slowly. Dylan, I built my company from nothing. I've been financially supporting this family since I was 16 years old. The mortgage on her parents' house, her credit cards, her car, her apartment, her health insurance, all of it has been coming from my accounts for years. And when I finally drew a line at giving away my home, I got slapped in front of your entire social circle. He rubbed his temples like he was fighting a headache. I had no idea about any of this. Why would you? Sophia's entire lifestyle has been subsidized by me for so long that she probably forgot it wasn't her own money. Jesus! He looked up at me. And now you've cut off all the financial support. I've restored appropriate boundaries between my finances and my family's expectations. Madison, Sophia can't survive without that support. She's never had to budget or manage money or... Then maybe it's time she learned. He was quiet again. Then, my parents think I should postpone the wedding. What do you think? I think I'm engaged to someone I apparently don't know very well, whose family I definitely don't understand, and who's been living a lifestyle she can't actually afford. He looked exhausted. I love Sophia, but this whole situation has shown me sides of her I've never seen before. Such as? She's been lying to me for months about her financial situation. She let me believe her family was well off when apparently they've been depending on your support for years. And when I asked her about what really happened at the wedding, she stuck to this story about a misunderstanding, even when I told her I'd heard other versions of events. I said nothing, letting him work through it. She's also been pressuring me to ask my parents for money to help with her immediate expenses, as if this is somehow their responsibility now. And how do your parents feel about that? They think she's a gold digger who's only interested in our family's money. He laughed bitterly. The irony is that they were impressed by what they thought was your family's financial stability. Now they're wondering if Sophia was just performing wealth she didn't actually have. Dylan, can I ask you something? Sure. If Sophia had been honest from the beginning about her financial situation and her family dynamics, would it have mattered to you? He considered this. Honestly? Probably not. I mean, I would have wanted to understand the situation better, but I wouldn't have cared about her not having money. My family has enough for both of us. But the lying matters. The manipulation matters. The fact that she's been living a fake life and pulled me into it without my knowledge, that matters a lot. I nodded. What are you going to do? I don't know. He stood up, looking older than his 28 years. I need to think about whether I'm marrying the person I think I'm marrying or whether I've been in love with a carefully constructed image. After he left, I sat in my office as the sun set over the city, painting the harbor gold and orange through my windows. My phone had been buzzing all day with calls from family members, friends of the family, even a few distant relatives who'd apparently heard about the situation and wanted to offer their opinions on family loyalty and forgiveness. I ignored them all. By Sunday, the full scope of the fallout was clear. Mom and Dad had listed their house for sale, hoping to find something smaller they could afford on their own income. Sophia had moved back in with them, her influencer lifestyle effectively over. Her follower count was dropping as people noticed the dramatic change in her content and lifestyle. Dylan had asked for a break from the engagement to reassess the relationship, which in old money speak meant it was probably over. My extended family was split between those who thought I'd gone too far and those who quietly admitted they'd been wondering when I'd finally stand up for myself. And me? I was free. For the first time in 14 years, my success was mine alone. My money supported my life, not everyone else's expectations. My decisions were based on my own goals, not family obligations. The penthouse felt different now, not like a symbol of achievement I had to share or justify, but like a home that was truly mine. I could expand my business without worrying about family emergencies draining my accounts. I could make decisions based on what was best for Chin Tech Solutions, not what would keep the peace at family dinners. I thought about calling Dylan to see how he was doing, but decided against it. He needed to figure out his relationship with Sophia without my input. Either he'd see through the lies and manipulation, or he wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. Monday morning, I got a call from Richard Hartwell. Ms. Chen, I wanted to follow up on our conversation last week. I've been thinking about your decision to withdraw from our project, and I'm wondering if there might be room for reconsideration. I appreciate the call, Mr. Hartwell, but my position hasn't changed. I understand there were some family tensions at the wedding that might have influenced your decision. If that's the case, I want you to know that my business relationship with you would be completely separate from any personal family matters. Interesting. Either he was desperate for my services, or he'd figured out that the family tensions were more serious than anyone had initially realized. That's good to know, but my decision stands. Ms. Chen, can I be frank with you? Please. You're the best technology consultant we've interviewed. Your proposal was exactly what we need. Your reputation is impeccable, and frankly, losing your services is going to cost us significantly more than we'd budgeted for this project. I understand that's frustrating. What would it take to change your mind? I considered this. The Hartwell contract would be huge for my business, and turning it down was costing me too. But working with Dylan's family while his relationship with Sophia imploded seemed like asking for complications. Nothing right now, Mr. Hartwell, but I appreciate your persistence. Would you consider revisiting this conversation in a few months, after things have settled? Possibly. After I hung up, I realized something had shifted. For the first time in years, I was turning down opportunities based on my own comfort level rather than family obligations. It felt powerful in a way I hadn't expected. 3 months later, Sophia and Dylan's engagement was officially over. She'd moved to Los Angeles, trying to rebuild her influencer career with a completely different image. Something about finding herself and living authentically, which was ironic given the circumstances. Mom and Dad had downsized to a small condo and were slowly learning to live within their actual means. Dad's business was struggling, but he was adapting. Mom had gone back to work full-time for the first time in years. And me? Chen Tech Solutions had landed 3 new major clients, including a consulting deal with a startup that was being acquired by a Fortune 500 company. My revenue was up 40% from the previous year, and for the first time, it was all mine. I called Richard Hartwell back and accepted his project. The family drama was over, and Dylan had proven himself to be decent enough that working with his father wouldn't be awkward. Sometimes people asked if I regretted how things had played out. If I missed having a close family, if I felt bad about Sophia's situation, if I ever thought about reaching out to repair the relationships. The answer was simple. I regretted waiting so long to value myself as much as I'd valued everyone else. Some bridges are worth burning, especially when they've been built on your back without your permission. I'd spent 14 years being the family foundation, and when I finally asked for basic respect in return, I got slapped for my selfishness. Now I had something better than their approval. I had my freedom, and that was worth everything.